All right, so let me do some introductions here. Let me shift the camera just slightly here. Get everyone in. No, I'll take care of it on my end here. We're good. All right, so from the stream's left, we have got Leo, we have got Silorien in the middle, and we have got Heather in the right. I can't remember what your forum name is now.
It's Zyrca.
Zyrca. I keep
And
on asking that.
my forum name is Ransroth.
Oh, Ransroth. Ransroth?
Ransroth.
Okay, cool. So let me start with you, Leo. You have worked on Lord of the Rings Online for a very long time. You're not currently working on Lord of the Rings Online, but you have a lot of history with the game, and I have heard you described as a miracle worker. Care to comment? Yeah.
Wow. I don't know. I don't know that I call myself a miracle worker, but I've been on LOTRO. I was on LOTRO for a long time. Actually, Heather and I started on LOTRO at the same time. Heather has more history with Turbine than that, but we were quote unquote new engineers on LOTRO in May of 2009. So my first LOTRO expansion, my first LOTRO release that I was at was when the just outside of Moria and near Lothlorien there was the area with all the orcs. I forget what it's called. It was like book 7, I want to say. But anyway, this was my first time that I was in the war room as a new engineer. And my first feature was the little up arrow menu on the
really?
left-hand side. So if you played LOTRO before that was there, then that was before my time. But if you played it, anytime you played it was there, that was my very first feature I worked on.
Now, I know, so just, I guess let me actually back up. I don't know if I've actually explained this at a base level. The engineering team does a lot of what the community sometimes think of as systems work, UI work, things like the bank system, the inventory system. You also work on various things just really that keep the game running. Everything from does the LOTRO store open, how that works, the flow. So I guess what do you have some specific areas that you would say I spent a lot of time working on that thing? So
The area that I spent the most time on probably is, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit it, it's the instance finder, we call it internally Fellowship Maker. That was a big feature that was a lot of work to make, and unfortunately it's not used very much. But it still has a special place in my heart. We put a lot of heart and soul into it. But I've worked on a lot of different things, like along the lines of what you say. I've been lucky that I was able to put in some things that just for my own. Like when I played LOTRO and things that I really wanted, like I added ability to autofellow. I don't know how many people know that that's a thing. You can mark one of your friends, and then as soon as you were both logged in, it just automatically drops you into fellowship. Or ability to search items in your inventory. Just lots of little things over time that, like, hey, this would be kind of cool. Oh, I can just add that. But can't always do that, but I've been happy to be able to do that sometimes.
nice. Let me pass the mic here to you, Silorien. You actively have been working quite a bit on LOTRO, and really since the transition, but even going before that. What have you been working on lately, I guess?
Most recently, within the past year, what I've worked on the most has been the premium housing update, the adjustable housing hooks I did. I also worked on featured instance tech and the Stable Master collection stuff.
I know that you have also, when you in the community say, fix the lag, people go to you sometimes and say, fix the lag. And
Right.
what is, so I guess, why don't we actually talk about that a little bit, kind of maybe in more detail in a bit, but what is that, like, when you get those kind of start of investigative phases, hey, let's try to look at the landscape and see what sorts of improvements can be made. How do you tackle that?
Well, lag is a very tricky thing because first we have to determine, is it actually client performance that's a problem? Is there what we call a runaway effect going on, where suddenly we've stacked thousands of the same effect on a player and their client is just not able to chew on that information fast enough to display it? Or is it really server lag? Is there a problem on the servers, or some problem with the route in between you and the server? Really, I just have to take it on a case-by-case basis. There are a few things I can depend on, tools and such, to give me a little information. For instance, I have some commands I can run that try to determine if it's a runaway effect or not, and if it is, then we can take steps to fix that effect. I don't know, I mean, there's a couple of things I fixed recently, like I found in the code we had, if you're familiar with the terminology, we had a big
Get
O.
techie. Either they'll understand it or they won't. You know, it's fine.
Big O of n squared operation on the effects that we were processing client side. So that was a very expensive thing for us to be doing practically every frame. And I was able to get rid of that, which hopefully should, improve performance as far as effects are concerned on the client. Now, the actual server lag, that actually falls more in the hands of operations team to determine whether or not something's wrong with the servers physically or with the network route.
All right, and let me pass the mic here to Zyrca as well. What are some of the projects we've found you tasked with, let's say, past 6 months or so?
Well, the big one on my mind right now is replacing the embedded browser.
Right.
We've been using Osmium as the browser for quite some time, and because the world moves forward and there's improved security protocols, it was no longer up to the task. It could not support any kind of PCI compliance, and so I've been replacing it with a Chromium embedded framework, which has been a very interesting challenge. Unfortunately, it took a little longer than we wanted, and so that's why we've got the out-of-game browser thing going on right now.
But it's also working. The light at the end of the tunnel, I think, is what we might be calling it. We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Yeah. So I know I saw some people huzzahing not too long ago with some of the work you did. So we got to be making progress, right?
It's displaying web content now. It can't quite load the store. Working on that one.
Yeah. Nice.
Today.
So as soon as I mentioned the word engineer, I have been hearing in chat about when can we have a 64-bit client. Without writing a manual about this, what kind of process is involved? But when you actually say, well, how do you move from, say, 32 to 64-bit?
So the easy part is changing the various data structures, like the integers. A lot of them are 32-bit sized, and we need to make sure that when they become larger, this doesn't become a problem. Like if you want to pass a 64-bit int to a 32-bit API, you'll lose data. That's no good. That's honestly the easy part. The hard part is going to be upgrading the compiler that we use. We're still using a pretty old version of the Microsoft Visual compiler, and we integrate a whole bunch of third-party libraries which are already compiled with that same old compiler. So we need to track down all of these libraries and either recompile them or get the vendors to give us new libraries that we can then compile into our game, and so that we can use them. It's like this giant puzzle of you need the right bitness as well as the right compiler, and just to make it even more complicated, we have OS X thrown into the mix.
Yeah. And a lot of people have been asking, are we getting a 64-bit client? We have nothing new to say about that, other than what Severlin has already said, which is that it is something we're investigating. So, yeah, exactly right. Part of, I think, the difficulty that all three of you face is you have people like me who are less techy, who just say, can't you just do a thing? And you have to say, no, we can't. How do you go about doing that sort of, is this something we can realistically make a change, or is it something that perhaps is great in theory but not so much in practice?
Either of you want to speak to this?
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Me? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing to do is somebody asks you to do something crazy, and you're like, oh, there's no freaking way. Sleep on it. Because
Yeah, right.
sometimes you're like, oh, yeah, we could do that. So I'd say sleep on it is step one. Then after that, or between there, investigating what are the different opportunities. You know, sometimes we'll have history like, oh yeah, I remember when we tried to do that 5 years ago and it didn't work out for reasons X, Y, and Z, which might involve going and tracking down the person who did it and asking them if they remember. Because we've actually tried to do a lot of things over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, part of what I see your team do, the engineers do, is investigate, and sometimes it ends up being something that we see in a tactile way in the game. Sometimes it ends up being maybe something we're a little more prepared to do then in the future, should we want to be able to pursue it. And sometimes it's like, well, that seemed like a great idea, but I guess we're due to various factors, it's just not something that's likely to happen, right?
Sorry, I just remembering when you were talking,
Yeah.
I think that cosmetic weapons are now in the game, right?
Yeah.
Cosmetic weapons is a thing that strikes me as exactly that kind of thing where for a very long time I would go into meetings and we would be like, hey, we would really want cosmetic weapons, and we'd be told, no, we just really can't do it. And like for literally years this was happening. And then at some point we had a new not new, one of our tech artists. I think that over time you just get better at things and you know more of the game and more understand it. And Evan, who I don't know if Evan's already been here or whether he's coming later, but we had yet another one of these meetings, and he's like, wait, I think I actually know how to do this. And then we just kind of did it, and then cosmetic weapons were a thing. So sometimes things that seem impossible just end up being possible later on, which I know is a frustrating thing for players, because you would like to think that either a problem is really hard or it's really easy, but sometimes, it starts out being really hard, and then...
Yeah, the very funny thing here is that the systems that sound really complex to begin with always inadvertently end up being the easiest ones to implement for some reason. Some things where they say, hey, change the dye color on this outfit over here. We'll spend a week working on that for some stupid reason. I don't know.
Why can't we have a cloak in the other game,
Yeah, the cosmetic weapons, a lot of things that are really easy to say end up being really hard to do. And it's really, you just really can't know. You just have to think about it and know how everything works together.
I like this question that, let me see, no, it's scrolled up. From, oh, sorry, I can't pronounce that. TWRCRYF over in Twitch chat. What is the craziest thing you've tried that didn't work out? Yeah, what have you said, let's see if I can do this, and then at some point, you just had to say, you know what, I can't.
I mean, one thing that I wanted to try, I don't know if it's the craziest, but I'm like, hey, it would be really neat if I could place a marker on the map and be able to navigate. A bunch of other games do this. And so I had a local version where I've started working on it a little bit. I'm like, no, this is going to be really hard and I can't do it right away.
Yeah, that's probably the most often thing, is it's not that it's impossible, it's that the amount of actual hours it would take to implement a thing is just vastly outweighs the reasonableness of bringing it to the game. Right?
That's the one that I can think of where I started it and I'm like, no, this is not a thing that I can do right away. There was also, I was working on multi-use. That was another thing that was where you could use multiple items from a stack at the same time. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to do this for IXP runes, but then and I, as far as I know, this is still a case where you can't multi-use IXP runes, and it's because what ended up happening is the feature exploded. We were like, but really we want to do it right, which is to make IXP runes like a real currency, and you can add to it. And then it's like, okay, well, we need a little more time, and we don't have that time. But
Sure.
that would have been really nice.
We got any other good examples here?
This one's kind of probably sounds very random, but you can rename a character. And I thought, hey, why in the world do you need to be logged into a character in order to rename a character? So I'm like, I can do this in character generation. And I kept trying, and it just, in the end, it was not possible to get a message all the way to the database and back and rename a character from character
Nice.
generation.
See, that is exactly one of those things that'd be like, well, sure, that
Yeah,
can't
why
be
not?
tough, right? Yeah. So, neat, very cool. Okay, so one of the questions I get in the live stream fairly regularly is, why can't we just change the game engine? Why can't the game engine just sort of be updated every couple of years to the more modern game standards and that? I know that that's kind of a big question and sort of a ridiculous question, but why can't we? Do you have a good answer for that? The answer I've given, I guess, let me just to give you a second to think about it, is that, it's just really not how games work, for one thing. But you can't just sort of pull out, say, the nervous system of a body and then replace that nervous system with something else. There are too many tendrils, too many areas that it works for. Is that sort of in the ballpark?
I'd say so. I mean, we have over 2 decades worth of code at this point. Replacing any given chunk is a possibility, although can be a very large task. For example, we could perhaps replace the physics engine.
Yeah, right. And we have in the past, yeah.
But just up and replacing the entire game engine,
game.
well, you're basically making a new game.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I don't think it's totally fair to say that the engine is an old engine. We are constantly working on the engine now. We don't have complete overhauls of the engine, but we do improve the engine where it's needed, where we feel like it's needed.
Yeah. But it's not just, like replacing a hard drive, unplug the one, put in the new one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the fact is that so much of we've built so many things on top of the engine that they would not work on top of somebody else's engine. Like if we wanted to say, okay, let's just use Unreal or Unity or some other engine, then all of the stuff we've done needs to be rewritten. And even if it was all rewritten, redone with the new systems, it would then need to be tested, which is a enormous task. And the benefits just do not justify the effort. I mean, it's maybe theoretically possible with infinite resources, which nobody has. So, yeah.
All right. Final question then, and I'm going to let you guys get going. What's the favorite thing you've had to work on? You've gotten the opportunity to work on. Do you have a favorite?
I'd have to say the adjustable housing hook stuff was a big favorite of mine. And it came about because I had just worked on the premium housing and got digging around in the code and started to have a little fun with it after I was done with all what I consider to be the hard work.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's been a place. The favorite things to work on have been things where it's something that I felt really improved my own experience as a player, like searching for items. I really enjoyed doing the bank redo. That was a long time ago now, but I was able to squeeze in all the little features that I wanted, the sort and the search and and it was really satisfying to work with the players. The first version of it was fairly bad, and I had to keep promising on the forums that no, it's going to get better. Really, I'm going to fix everything, make it all better. And they were like, no, this is awful. Bring back the old ones where you just had fixed size bags, and it was so much better, and people could just put things in the bags. And they're like, but I think it worked out well, and that was probably one of my favorite things to work on.
All right.
So I'm going to go with a bittersweet one. I'd have to say the free-to-play transition for me, which implementing an in-game store. I actually did it twice. First I did it for PlaySpan, and then we moved on to Exola, and each time I was in a very different place. I was an individual contributor the first time, and I was much more involved in overseeing the entire process the second time. So while it was, frustrating and challenging. It was also one of the most rewarding things I think I've worked on here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, thank all three of you for being here. I really appreciate you stopping by. It was good to have you here, and happy 10th anniversary.
Thank you. Happy 10th anniversary. And I see Evan out there. So he was the one that I was talking about who made Cosmetic Weapons real. So you guys can thank him.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yep. All right, let me, we're going to be bringing on a couple more folks here. While we are doing that, let me do something that will make thee happy. I am going to drop a couple of codes for the Perlino Steed. And I'm going to do that. Yep, come in and sit down. We'll, I'm going to do a little chat here and do a giveaway, and then we'll be back in just a second. I'm going to play a song, or actually, I don't even know if it's a song. I saw a file, something to do with Gollum. We're going to kind of have to see what that ends up being here. But I will get that done for you. It was a short one? Well, I'll play it anyway while I do this giveaway.